We'd waive a formal reading, further advisement of rights, and are pleas of not guilty to all 4 counts.
A man accused of a crime a coroner said is the worst he has ever witnessed pleads not guilty. The suspect in the orange jumpsuit is a former pastor, a convicted child predator who allegedly murdered an 82-year-old woman using a nail gun and buried her under a shed that he was building. And now we know when he will stand trial. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. It is hard to believe that a human being would be capable of a crime as gruesome as the one the man we just saw in court is accused of committing. Jeffrey Zizz sat next to a lawyer. He barely said anything in Thurston County Court this week. Words can't really describe how horrible the crime is that he is accused of committing. He allegedly killed 82-year-old Marcia Norman. He was her handyman. Let's break down what we know at this point. We know that Marcia Norman, who was a mom, she was a grandmother, lived alone in a quiet part of Washington state. Take a look at this video. This is the street view of where she lived. Again, this is a quiet country road, but for as quiet as where she lived was, she really was someone who seems like she regularly kept in contact with others, with her friends, with her family, with her neighbors. So when this grandma wasn't heard from for multiple days, people became concerned. On April 4th, her son called police saying no one had heard from Marcia since April 1st. This was the flyer the local sheriff's office put out when she went missing. Her son said that she wasn't the kind of person to go off and not tell anyone. Inside Marcia's house, deputies found her medication, and a big clue here, it was in a planner, and it showed that her meds hadn't been taken since April 1st. Deputies accessed her Apple ID, and another clue, the last person she was seen with before she went missing was Jeffrey Zizz, her handyman, and messages show the two had dinner that night, April 1st. Not only was it a red flag that deputies needed to go talk to Jeffrey Zizz, this handyman, it is also important to note who he was before he was a handyman. Zizz used to be a pastor at a church in North Thurston, Washington. His X account doesn't have any activity since 2012, but there are a handful of then tweets where you can see that he really plays the part of a pastor, of a church leader. He talks about God. This one says, quote, "What does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God?" Then he has this one that reads, quote, "Amazing grace, excellent wife, wonderful children, honorable profession, extraordinary neighbors, I almost feel guilty, hashtag too much blessing for tweet." But just a reminder of where Jeffrey Zizz is right now. That is him in that orange jumpsuit, now accused of a heinous murder for killing Marcia Norman. And we'll talk more about what happened next in the investigation that brought him into custody. But it's also important to note that this is not the first time that Jeffrey Zizz has been in custody. Zizz is a convicted sex offender. He was convicted in 2022. He pleaded guilty to charges including second-degree child molestation. His victims were between the ages of 12, 14 years old. Zizz reportedly only served 11 months in prison, though, because he was released under a law in Washington state called Special Sex Offender Sentencing Alternative. That means the court determines his level of risk to a community, and then he can be released on conditions into a treatment program outside of prison. One of the conditions was that he could not leave Washington state. I will talk more about that in just a moment. It is unclear, perhaps it will forever be unclear, whether Marcia Norman knew that Jeffrey Zizz had this past and that he was a registered sex offender. But we also know that he was much more than a handyman to Marcia Norman. The two, it appears, had a friendship. We do know that Marcia's family had a story of Zizz allegedly crossing the line between the two. Deputies say that Marcia's son told them that one time his mom woke up in the middle of the night and there was Jeffrey Zizz standing at the foot of her bed. Marcia then told Zizz to leave and they needed to keep a professional relationship. Days after Marcia went missing, deputies went to talk to Jeffrey Zizz. He allegedly told police that after having dinner at Marcia's house on April 1st, he went home around 9 p.m. And he says that he didn't leave his house until he had to go to work the next morning, which was around 6 a.m. April 2nd. But that was a lie, according to deputies, because a camera system spotted Zizz's truck driving overnight at around 3 o'clock in the morning. Zizz allegedly then admitted that he lied, but said that he only went back to Marcia's house to get equipment for work. Notably for that trip, his cell phone didn't show movement during that time, as if he knew that would be something that deputies would look at, so he left it behind. Hey, by the way, our content shows just how rampant crime is right now. It's becoming more dangerous, it's becoming more widespread, and that is especially true with cybercrime, and it is targeting businesses like never before. How about this? Did you know in 2024, 1 in 5 businesses fell victim to ransomware? Half of those were small businesses. But don't worry, Apollo Networks is here to protect your business and help you fight against these business-ending threats. They use the latest cybersecurity technologies to monitor your systems 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, stopping threats before you even know they're there, preventing downtime, and safeguarding your data. Beyond just protection, they optimize your daily operations by managing your backups, providing 24/7 tech support, and being your trusted partner for all your IT needs. Their mission is very simple: deliver elite level security while helping your business run faster, more efficiently, and with peace of mind. No business is too big or too small, whether you have 1 computer or 1,000 computers. They have custom solutions that fit every industry. Head over to apollonetworks.com/on the case. You can also scan this QR code on your screen for a free network health assessment and 50% off your first month. Now, another odd part of Zizz's story was that the Ring doorbell at the place where he was renting did not show him leave the house to go back, allegedly, to Marcia's house in the middle of the night. So the question would be, how is he able to leave the home to go to Marcia's house? Well, deputies say they looked at Zizz's bedroom window and the frame was bent as if it had been removed at one point to get out of the house without the doorbell camera catching him on the way out. Deputies then executed a search warrant at the place where Zizz was renting, a search warrant that allowed them to look through his room. And at this point, based off what they found, this story went from very suspicious to very scary. Here is what the sheriff in Thurston County had to say at a news conference. This video per KOMO TV.
On April 5th in the evening, Jeffrey's house and room were searched and items were seized, which included a 5-page letter which meticulously planned out a burglary and sexual assault of a woman who was referred to as his customer.
Zizz had already told investigators that he had romantic feelings for the 82-year-old Norman. We do not know as of yet what specifically that letter that deputies found said. Deputies followed Zizz's last known locations, and the trail led them to a home in Olympia, Washington, where Zizz was building a shed. It was for a client that he had met through Marcia Norman. Here is what Thurston County deputies found next. Once again, this video of this news conference from KOMO TV.
On April 9th, with the help of numerous entities, the Thurston County Sheriff's Office lifted up the shed with power equipment, and TCSO detectives began digging, and at that point in time, we located human remains about 18 inches underground in a shallow grave with concrete poured over the top.
The next part of this story is not easy to talk about. It was not easy even for the local coroner to talk about. An autopsy confirmed that the body they found beneath that shed was Marcia Norman's. She was in concrete. Deputies say her wrists and ankles were wrapped with long Velcro straps. They say that she was possibly bound before she died.
I've been with the coroner's office for nearly 25 years, with 19 years as the coroner, and this is the worst case I've witnessed.
Here's what the coroner said about her cause of death.
I take no pleasure in delivering the following message because it's going to sting. The immediate cause of death for Marcia is combined blunt force and penetrating sharp force injuries of the head. Other significant conditions contributing to Miss Norman's death were multiple blunt force injuries to her torso and extremities.
At this point, Zizz was gone. He allegedly fled Washington State by taking his roommate's truck. Eventually, he was taken into custody hours away and states away in Missoula, Montana. The first charges that he faced that allowed police to hold him before he was charged with murder was for allegedly breaking the conditions of his release as a sex offender. One of them was that he could not leave Washington State. This is a video of Zizz facing a judge in Montana per KOMO. But now Zizz is back in Washington State. He is facing 4 charges for what police have described as a death that was slow, that was torturous, and he is facing a charge of murder in the first degree, kidnapping in the first degree, and unlawful disposal of human remains, and he is being held without bond.
State of Washington versus Jeffrey Zizz.
His arraignment was very brief this week. Zizz did not show any emotion. He briefly spoke to his lawyer. His lawyer waived a reading of the charges, so those did not have to publicly be read in court. Instead, they entered a quick plea.
Mr. Zizz, you are here for your arraignment hearing today. At this hearing, the court will hear from your attorney with your initial plea to charges and then set dates in your case. You are in the jail booth with your attorney, Attorney Martinez. During this hearing, if you have a question about what is happening in the hearing and you need to speak to Attorney Martinez confidentially, he can mute the jail booth so you can have a private conversation, and he has the court's permission to do so. Attorney Martinez, are you and your client prepared to proceed with arraignment at this time?
We are, Your Honor. We've received a copy of the information. I've reviewed that with my client. We'd waive a formal reading, further advisement of rights, and enter pleas of not guilty to all 4 counts.
Mr. Zizz, on your behalf, at your attorney's request, the court is entering not guilty pleas to the 4 counts in the information that was filed on April 23rd, 2025.
The judge set a trial date for June 30th for Zizz. He is expected back in court on May 28th for his next hearing. As for the victim in this case, a woman who was a mom, she was a grandmother, her family says she was their center. The Norman family released a statement through the sheriff's office saying, quote, Marcia was the one that brought us together. We're thankful for the efforts of law enforcement, the Thurston County Sheriff's Office, Missoula Police Department in their handling of this matter. We are cooperating fully with the investigation in an effort to come to a resolution regarding the manner of her death. Our family is grieving and looking for ways to honor her memory. Marcia was an engaged member of her community and family, full of life, with plans for the future. She is loved by many. We don't know the motive for what Zizz allegedly did at this point. What could encourage even the most twisted of person to allegedly do something as horrible as the crime that he is accused of committing? The local sheriff was asked about motive at that news conference, and from his perspective, he said Jeffrey Zizz, who apparently wore many hats in his life, whether it was a pastor or a handyman, the sheriff says he is, quote, a violent person. Joining us now to talk about this case is retired NYPD Detective David Sarney. David, thank you for joining us. This is just it's a horrifying case, and words really can't describe what we've learned from police. But what do you make of this suspect, Jeffrey Zizz? I think the question just is, how could someone do what he's alleged to have done?
You have to look at it this way. He's a sadist. You know, this is what it's frustrating for police to put the work in that they did, and to get a guy that had pled to child molestation of family members, and then to do this. And it is insulting to what law enforcement did to put this person, you know, to arrest him and to get all the evidence to get him to plea, because 8 years is a huge plea. You don't usually plead at such a high number. They were looking to hammer him. And you look back and you look and you go, this is avertible. This is an avoidable situation. I don't know where legislators lose the fact that there are victims in these cases, and especially when it comes to child molestation, that, you know, this person, they think he's going to be a valuable member of society because it was the best way they put it is he was honest. That really is what you get out of an individual who molested children, that he was honest about it. And now you put the cops back on the spot again, where they have to now investigate a missing person and another family who now not only has children that are molested, they have a family member who's dead, who was murdered by an individual, again, allegedly at this point, but he's been arrested for it. And as this investigation continues, it's just appalling. I hold back my New York expletives when I was looking at this case. It's just embarrassing.
It is, because I think
that it's high.
Yeah, and it's, you hear the conversation around criminal justice reform, and I think on the surface, a lot of people, when you say, do you think that there should be criminal justice reform in certain parts of the system? The answer is yes, but then you have some of these cases where he served 11 months and then he's let out and he's supposed to follow these terms. And then police, on top of all the evidence that they've uncovered, and they're still looking for more, he has this manifesto, this 5-page document that they found that details, and we haven't read it yet. We don't know specifically what it says, but police say it details what he wanted to do to someone that he called a client. In your experience, why is it, and we see it in a lot of cases, but why is it that these people who are alleged to have done these things leave behind documents like this that are just detailing? It's hard to get into their mind and know why they would do something like this, but why is it that we often see letters like this left behind?
These are things that are becoming more and more. We see social media when they do this, and now you're seeing in a written form on a letter. I don't know why that people would write these things down, but because people will say it's a fantasy and they're writing out a fantasy and it's not going to happen and it's not real. But this fantasy became reality. This is what it seems to be. I mean, you're detailing the customer and putting through in relatively, I believe, gory detail what he wanted to do. And we're seeing this more and more where people want to express who they are, express themselves, as far as they're not keeping it under wraps. We're seeing, we're looking at, if you look at Gilgo Beach, on evidence on that, where he has had documentation, he's written things about these alleged crimes and what he's looking to do. We've seen the national shooter write a manifesto. We're seeing people do this more and more often. And either it's a way of, if they're not going to survive, to have something carry on, like a memento of what they were thinking. I'm not a psychologist. I'm just pretty much a detective, but it's beneficial for us because it adds another bit of evidence, relatively circumstantial, but evidence to show that this guy was looking to do something. He wrote it down, and he felt it strongly enough to write it down, and that's something we have to look at. Like, I don't write down everything. You don't take notes, but he wrote down in detail his notes about this, about what he wanted to do to this customer.
It's so disturbing. And to your point, though, as a detective, I mean, you've been around some people who have been accused and have committed some really heinous crimes, I'm sure, in your career. What is the difference between, and both are terrible, but to have this type of case, I mean, this was a slow death, this was torture. What is the difference between that person who commits a murder, but then someone who apparently goes to the levels that, according to police, Jeffrey Zizz did in this case?
And look, I mean, there are people who are sadists. There are people who have been, who've programmed themselves through whatever outlet they have, media, videos, porn, things like that, where they just enhance their feelings. And then, as far as social media, it actually enhances that. The algorithms put people toward that. So this could be something that he was geared toward from that. I mean, he's molested children and his family members. He molested family members. So how does it go from a molestation of minors to now it looks like a murder of an 82-year-old woman? We cannot connect them directly, right? We can't connect the dots directly as to why that changed, because it's usually you deal with children. And he was looking to sexually assault her based on the letter that he wrote. But at this point, they have not seen action of sexual assault. So maybe he was going to, she reneged, and that's where this happened. Unfortunately, we don't have a victim that can speak about this. And that's why the evidence and the investigation will speak for the victim. And that's what happens in murder cases. We want to have, we detectives and investigators speak for the victim, and through the evidence that they recover to determine the facts of the case, the totality of circumstances, putting this person who did it. And it looks more and more like Jeffrey Zizz is the culprit in this place, in this position. We're going to look to, they're looking to get him. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to find all the evidence that they have. And if it pinpoints him as the murderer, then that's what they're going to do. We have to speak to the victims and for the victims.
When we look at the evidence at this point, and there seems to be a lot of it that police have that ties Jeffrey Zizz to this case. It's the shed that he was building where Marcia Norman's body was found. It was the fact he was the last person that was seen with her, and there's evidence of that through text messages. He snuck out of the house, didn't go out the front door, apparently went out the window to avoid the Ring doorbell camera. But at least from what we know, from what police have said and the court documents that we have, is we don't know exactly where he allegedly killed Marcia Norman. How important is that to the investigation that is still going on right now with a trial date that's apparently coming pretty quickly on June 30th?
Yeah, it's very important because they have to try to, locate that. They were able to, luckily GPS helped them locate where he was. Now the question is, where was she taken? The house apparently does not seem to be in a disarray. Her dishes were regularly set there. He made his claim that he went there to have dinner with her, and then he left. Nothing happened. That was it. But is it where was it in the building or a building where he did this? So hopefully they're able to track this and possibly through video, cameras, license plate readers if they're available, things that GPS. We have GPS on the excavator we use. Is there anything more that ties him to another location? Which means they're going to look toward anything he has to his. If he has computer records, if he kept records of what he was going to do, he possibly kept records of where he was going to go when he went with this woman. So that's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to now is we have a position where where we have a victim missing, we have a location where she's found. Now they're going to connect the dots as to how she got there. We know it's the truck because cadaver sniffing dogs smelled decomposition in his vehicle, so we know the car went there. Now they're going to look for probably cameras anywhere within the particular perimeter and LPRs, license plate readers, to see if they could find where he took her.
I'm not a police officer, not a lawyer either, but I mean, sitting back here, having read through all the court documents and following this story, it seems like there's a lot of evidence against Jeffrey Zizz. If I was a juror and this was presented to me, did he kill Marcia Norman? I could see a lot of people reasonably saying that he's the person who did this. But without having the location that it happened, I also don't know if they have the specific murder weapon, which apparently was either blunt force trauma, combination of blunt force trauma and potentially a nail gun. How important is it? I mean, do you need those particular pieces of evidence, the location where it happened, to get a conviction? Or based on what you're looking at here, do you think you could get a conviction with what we already know at this point?
Well, there's good information. It's good. They have evidence, but circumstantial. We know we have things that tie him into the body. And right now, they're charging with murder. But now, how do we tie the body? If there's DNA, if they're going to get DNA analysis off the body, did he have come into contact with the body at any given time? That's something that we're going to be looking at. So we have to tie him. We know he disposed of the body. We're charging with murder. But now it does matter where the victim was taken and the victim was murdered. And they haven't. Apparently, he utilized a nail gun, and it looks like they're going to compare the nail gun to the nails recovered, unfortunately, from this victim. I mean, the blunt force trauma. They want to look for these items, and it's beneficial because now if we can tie the nail gun to him, that it somehow connects and consistent with what that is. And if we can find the weapon, if he did utilize some sort of blunt instrument, some sort of dangerous object, it'll be beneficial because now you can tie it in from the DNA recovered from that item to the victim and to the perpetrator.
And this next part, it's not easy to talk about because it's one of the more horrific parts of this case, but she was found in concrete underneath this shed that Jeffrey Zizz was apparently working on. From a medical examiner, police officer point of view, can you gather enough DNA evidence and what you may need from the victim's body when it's in that type of situation as it was when it was found?
Yeah, when the decomposition, and if you're talking about DNA analysis, has been relatively young. It was 40 plus years since we've been doing it. But as technology has improved and DNA analysis improved, it's no longer you need like 25 or 30 hairs. You can have damaged hair. You can have a particle of hair. You can go from a quarter-sized bit of blood to now very small, almost microspecks of blood to recover. So that's the one thing. Technology has advanced the ability to recover DNA from areas that were not able to be done 10, 15 years ago. So that's a positive for that. But the end result is this person should never have been out. This person should have been incarcerated. Whatever Washington state legislators believe that sexual assault perpetrators, molesters, are going to be beneficial members to the society. There is a major disconnect. Because I don't know, I cannot say if they looked at him, they had a psychological analysis for him or anything along those lines. But if he's going to register as a sex offender, which is one of the aspects of that, he's not in the sex offender registry in the county. That's a problem. So where did this all go wrong? Because now that's what they're looking at. Because now they had to go backwards. They go to Jeffrey Zizz, they get a perpology in a sense, the suspect, and they find out he's been arrested and convicted. But then they look to see where his registry is, and they don't even have it. So in other words, law enforcement doesn't have even a way to track him in that area. They only track him once he flees the state, the county, and leaves. And that's when they start realizing this is not just a person who last saw it. This is probably the person involved in what happened.
Well, and two, I think for Marcia Norman, I mean, we perhaps will never know. Did she know that he had been convicted of what he was convicted, and would he have been her handyman? And beyond that, what appeared to be she struck a friendship with him. Would that have been the case if she at least had all the information? Would she have at least kept her distance? Unfortunately, we'll never know. For you, because I think sometimes maybe we take for granted the communication that police have with the families of victims and having to deliver the news like the officers, the deputies in Thurston County, Washington had to with Marcia Norman's family. I mean, how do you go about that conversation, especially in a case like this, where you're not only telling someone that their loved one had been murdered, but there are other details that are coming out in this story that are just nothing short of what you would see in a horror movie with what we just learn every single time details come out. How do you tell that to a family member or somebody?
Yeah, I do speak about death notification. It's probably one of the hardest things to do, and as far as police officers, detectives are, with the training and the ability to do it is extremely difficult. You don't put somebody and to tell them that they're dead, their family member has been murdered, and then you have to try to keep constant communication because you don't want the media to put something out that you were aware of, and then the media puts it out because then you lose that connection with the family. I will tell you this: the county sheriff, the detectives who have this case are in constant contact with them to keep them updated in any situations that may arise. And it's an awful thing to tell them. You don't want to tell them as to what happened, but sometimes it's things you have to do because you want the family to know, that this not only are this person's dead, but sometimes you got to tell them the facts of the case to them so they get an understanding. This is something, they actually looked at he went to the house and was at her bed, and then she was told, and that's the other thing. This guy was creepy. Was this a moment in time where this was going to be the cessation of the relationship of the handyman relationship after this happened? That might have been what triggered this. And that's the thing is the body apparently was decomposed from the vehicle, and they have this cadaver dogs who did that. So how did he transport? And that's going to be found. But when it comes to the family, you have to keep them updated on these situations. You don't want something to leak out in the media and they're not aware of it. So that's why you really have to keep consistent communication with the family. As hard as it is, that's the job you do. And we have to, as detectives, you compartmentalize this. You kind of section yourself off, and that section is going to be one for their family. And understanding that, as much as you're sad about it, you want to make sure that you get the person that committed the crime, and you get the evidence enough to convict the person who committed that crime.
Yeah, and you just think about the coroner in this county. It sticks with you when he says that it's the worst thing that he's ever seen with what people in that line of work see every single day. David Sarney, retired NYPD detective, thanks for taking the time to join us here on Law and Crime as always.
Thank you. Take care and stay safe.
The investigation is not over quite yet. The local sheriff has asked people in Washington state for video of the night that Jeffrey Zizz allegedly drove back to Marcia's home, hoping that they can get video of him in his car as they piece together his whereabouts that night and as this case moves forward. We'll continue to follow it. For On the Case, presented by Law and Crime, I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.